So yo, and welcome back to AECharlie Bish, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the TYRON Woodley versus Jake Paul boxing match slash fight, and there's a reason why I say it like that, which we'll dive into for sure. In terms of the video quality, like I did say yesterday, there would be a video out today, and we are on a temp setup still. I am going to be trying to improve mic quality, lighting quality, camera quality. It's on a dodgy tripod right now. That's what I'm trying to improve on next. And obviously editing the green screen in the background. That's the most important thing as well. Like I did say, in terms of if you are new around here, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Videos are going to be coming constantly, all different subjects, mostly sports, football, mixed martial arts, and some gaming when the right games come out. But there is the second channel, which I will start to upload to soon. As soon as I find the right topic, there will be a video there, so make sure you hit the subscribe button there, because when FIFA does come out, I might upload FIFA there or here. I'm not too sure, but we are gonna mix a match and then play around with it until we find the right balance. So if you have been watching for a while, or you know me personally, this is the first time I'm ever wearing glasses. I recently picked them up like 2 weeks ago. I got my eyes tested. They said I needed it. They said it was slight. I don't know, maybe or maybe so. I do feel a little bit of a difference, especially when working at the computer screen, because I got the blue LED stuff on it. It does help a little bit in terms of fatigue to do with the eye. Does it give me any more visual prowess? The Sharingan? Nah, I do feel a little bit of a difference, I suppose, when I first put it on and take it off, you feel it. But I'm not too sure about it overall, but it was expensive, so I do wear it, and I do feel a little bit of a difference. And obviously when I'm working like 8-10 hours at a computer screen, then I'm editing videos after, and then I'm obviously playing video games or watching TV, it does help massively. So that's why I do wear them, but I do try to give my eyes a break as much as possible. But that's a tangent. We're going to be talking about the TYRON Woodley Jake Paul boxing fight slash match, and the reason why I call it that is because it is one of boxing flaws, in my opinion. Like, in boxing, it's like, it is a fight, don't get me wrong. I don't want to be disrespectful to boxing at all, because I was a big fan of boxing, and obviously I used to watch all types of boxing. Nowadays I only really watch the higher level boxing, because I can really appreciate the fine arts. And yeah, coming from where he's come from, obviously fighting Deji first of all, not really looking impressive at all, then fighting Gibb, and obviously Nate Robinson, Ben Askren, TYRON Woodley. And the TYRON Woodley one's obviously the biggest jump up. TYRON Woodley is a wrestler by nature. I don't know, people will call him a striker, and I wouldn't necessarily say he was a striker too much. I would say more he's a wrestler with a big right hand. Like, he didn't really show us too much in the octagon, even with his hands. People say he's good with his hands. He is handy with his hands, but ultimately he has a jab right hand, and that's what he looks for most of the time. And he's a very patient counter striker, which obviously I think is the reason why they selected him. I think in terms of matchup, it was a very good selection for Jake Paul, and we will go into that why. And that is one of my issues I had before the fight, and how I could see it play out the way it did. But in terms of Jake Paul fighting TYRON Woodley, just stepping in there with him, just think about stepping into a fight with a MMA fighter. It's a welterweight champion, and obviously one of the greatest. I think people are a little bit hyperbole with that. I think if you look at TYRON Woodley's career, he has looked impressive. He did do really well. I had Wonderboy winning one of those fights, so you know, there's a lot of stuff that goes into obviously people's careers and history, but he is definitely one of the greats in terms of the welterweight for sure. So yeah, it is big, and this is the critique I have. I had enough of seeing MMA fighters get into the boxing ring. Can we stop this, please? It's like when CM Punk came over to MMA, you saw what happened. When Brock Lesnar came over to MMA, it was different. This is the same thing with mixed martial arts fighters going over to boxing. Only some fighters will be able to do that. And there's like fighters like, for example, Anderson Silva, I reckon he could do it. And when I mean go over there, I don't mean go there and compete at the highest level or even remotely close to it, but I mean compete with certain people, his age, his size, his weight class, and still look respectable doing it, and at least putting on a show. That Israel Adesanya, I think there's a few of these fighters. Obviously Israel used to be a kickboxer, so kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. There are a few of these fighters, but not everyone can go over there, and I've had enough of seeing this. MMA fighters thinking just because they're fighters they can get into boxing, and this is why I differentiate a little bit, because I know it is a boxing match, or say a boxing fight, but sometimes I call it a boxing match because it is a art in terms of the way they do it, but it is a fight still. But in MMA, it is a close to as a real fight as you're possibly gonna get. Let's talk about the actual fight. Jake Paul, I won't really, I'll be honest, let me take the lens off from a YouTubing aspect. Okay, he was a YouTuber, take it off. Looking at him as a boxer, I wasn't impressed. I didn't really think he looked great. He showed some courage. He fought back from adversity. Obviously he got hit by TYRON Woodley's big right hand, but Woodley didn't follow it up. Like, he just kind of like was very patient. didn't put combinations together. One of the biggest things in boxing, you have to set up your strikes. You can't just look for the over right hand, especially against someone who knows what he's doing. It's like he just looked for one big punch. Even when he hit him, if you rewatch when he hit him, he just stands there and looks at him like this. Like he's admiring his work. He needs to go in for the finish. He needs to go in for the kill. He never done that. He was passive. And this is what we saw Woodley. We saw it against Usman. We saw it against Colby Covington. We saw it against Gilbert Burns. We saw it against Wonderboy. We saw it against Damian Maia. The only fight we didn't see it against, it was Vicente Luque, and he got submitted in that fight. Although he did look impressive prior to the submission. But like, this is it. Passive Woodley, passive, and then right hand. That's literally his game plan, and he showed it again. And yeah, I'm just let down. I'm really let down because I think Jake Paul was there to get taken out. I really do. I wasn't really that impressed with him in terms of his boxing ability. In terms of where he came from and where he is now, I'm impressed. But in terms of the hype, and obviously, you know, it is publicity, it is what it is. But even his coaching team and obviously what they were saying about him, I wasn't that impressed with his boxing skill quotations. And I think Woodley, if he turned it up, he was there for the taking. He could have easily done it, but he didn't. And that's a little bit disappointing in terms of, like, I wanted to see a fight, and I think that's the most important thing. I don't come to watch these sort of events for a decision, you know, like passiveness, and Woodley brought that. I think Jake Paul was very passive in aspects as well. I think he was happy to stay on the outside, and I think that was obviously the game plan. You look at Woodley, really all you got to worry about is the overhand, right? And he's smaller than Jake Paul. He's not as big as Jake Paul. Size difference, even the size difference, there was a picture that I retweeted on Twitter, and it's like, you can tell that Jake Paul is the bigger man. And this is what I want to see going forward now for Jake Paul. I feel like Jake Paul has to fight either a boxer or someone his own size. And when I mean someone his own size, we're talking middleweight plus in UFC, for example. And we want to see him fight a boxer now, because he's fought obviously all these other people, like in terms of MMA fighters, obviously Ben Askren, TYRON Woodley. He's fought a basketball player, and he's fought 2 YouTubers. It's time to fight a boxer. You know, you call yourself boxing, you're in boxing, fight a boxer. I think personally for me, the Tommy Fury fight makes most sense. It's like same skill, same like kind of background in terms of Love Island, YouTube, you know, different audience, different fan base. They're very similar size. And I think it's actually a fair and close even fight, because I was disappointed when I watched Tommy Fury. I thought he was going to be a lot better than that. I thought he was going to take Anthony Taylor out there real quick, but he didn't. He looked really, really poor. So I think that's a closer fight than people will make out for it. I think before the fight, everyone thought that Tommy Fury would win, but now looking at that result, I think it's more of a 50-50 than ever before. But yeah, I think overall, I'm disappointed. I'll be honest. I was disappointed with the event. Not the event. I was disappointed with the fight. It weren't really a fight. It was more of a boxing match, and I say that like half and half. I do understand that boxing fights and matches the same thing, but in terms of, I wanted to see a scrap. This is what I wanted to see, a fight in that, but I didn't see a fight. I saw a couple of moments, but 96% of the fight was rather boring, and it was more exciting because what you thought could have happened. Like, you're just there. What? Oh, is Woodley gonna do this? Is Jake Paul gonna? Is this gonna happen? And then when it finished, like, oh wait, none of it happened. It's like watching that. I think it was a movie a long time ago. Can't remember what it's called, but it was about a monster in the forest, and for the whole movie you're anticipating, like, what's this monster, what's it gonna do? And then in the end, I think it turned out to be nothing, and it was like, well, what the hell was that? I literally just watched it, and then, because the first time you will watch it, you get the experience, but then when you think about it, yeah, I just wasted my time. And that's what I felt like in this kind of in this contest. Hopefully Jake Paul fights a boxer next, and someone who's going to challenge him, like in terms of, I thought Woodley could challenge him. Woodley's got the ability to challenge him, but I wasn't that impressed with Woodley. At the end of the day, I think both of them didn't really look impressive as boxers. But yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day, I suppose. It is a kind of an entertainment circus, and it is what it is. And obviously credit to Jake Paul for obviously splitting up his earnings in terms of, I think he put like his base pay, he separated around the fight card, and obviously that's good to see some other people getting paid as well. But yeah, it is what it is. Hopefully if we are going to see anything like that in the future, it is a little bit more entertaining, because I can't sit through that and watch another decision that's long. I want to see people get knocked out. I don't care who, let one of them get knocked out, yeah, or at least knockdowns. Come on, let's see some knockdowns. And I did technically think TYRON Woodley knocked him down. If the ropes weren't there, he was hitting the canvas. So yeah, let's talk about the decision as well. I thought it was a strange one, a split decision. I think all judges got these rounds mixed up. They all voted for different rounds for different people to win, and they scored it differently. Watching it first time, haven't rewatched it, just out of my first initial just watching the fight. I felt like Jake Paul won a boxing match. I felt like Tyron Woodley won the fight. I felt like Tyron Woodley had the better moments. I thought Tyron Woodley looked a little bit more aggressive, looked like he was ready to fight, even though he kind of wasn't. It's weird. He was pressing forward, but when I look back at it in hindsight, in terms of like thinking about it, he weren't really engaged. But when you're watching it the first time, it looks like he is engaged and he's ready to go. He gave Jake Paul the first 2 rounds, and I think that allowed Jake Paul to get the dub. But in the hindsight, in terms of a boxing match, it felt like Jake Paul won the boxing match. It felt like Jake Paul won more rounds, but Tyron Woodley looked like he got the better moments, basically. And I think that's what maybe feels a bit, maybe, I don't know, it's a bit like in UFC when like one guy does all the damaging and maybe the other guy just grapples for the next 2 rounds but don't really strikes and wins, and it's a bit like, it doesn't really feel like it's deserved. In the same in this aspect, Jake Paul kind of, not, I don't want to say it outboxed, I think he just used his size well. He used Tyron Woodley's weaknesses against him in terms of his inactivity, his not willingness to pull the trigger and put the pressure on, and he kind of just coasted a decision in a way. Had a little bit of adversity, got around it, which is obviously good for him. Showed he has got a little bit of a gas tank. I do feel like he was really tired, and I think if Woodley put the burners on him, then it could have been over. But I think Woodley was kind of tired anyway. So there is weaknesses. I think a lot of people watching that would see weaknesses in Jake Paul if you were convinced or not convinced before. But he has got some standard boxing ability for the level that he is at. But I do want to touch into these things a little bit more. Maybe I will go into a little bit more in depth in terms of my opinions on the fight a little bit more. But these are just my first initial thoughts, just off into the camera, just so I can get an upload out there. And obviously that's what I want to do at the moment until I get my setup, and then I can start planning content.